Hi, everybody. My name is Samantha Marshall, and I'm a homeownership advisor at AHEAD. Today, I'd like to take some time and talk to you about some student loan options that are now available during this COVID-19 pandemic. But first, let me share my screen with you. In order to understand what type of aid or assistance is available to you right now, it's important to know what type of student loan you have. So there's basically three different types of student loans. There's federal student loans, and those are typically all loans that are issued after 2010 that are called a federal loan. Now there's also a type of federal loan that's called a Federal Family Education Loan, or a FIFO loan. And this was where it can get a little bit confusing because it sounds like it's federally held, but it may actually not be federally held. So in order to determine whether those loans are federally held or not, it's really important that you visit studentaid.gov to determine if your loans are truly federally held. Any federal loans issued after, like I said, 2010, they're going to be federally held, but anything before 2010, it may or may not be federally held. So you want to do some little investigating to find out if your loans are truly federally held. The third type of loan is a private loan, and those are loans that were issued by banks, or the university you attended, or maybe even the state. So those have different types of aid, but it's important to understand whether you have private, federal, and whether those federal loans are actually federally held. So on March 13th, the federal government released the CARES Act. The CARES Act had a lot of really good aid and assistance for student loan borrowers. The first being that all federal student loans are now at a 0% interest rate. Now until September 30th of 2020. So that means there's no interest being accrued on those loans during this time period. There's also an automatic payment waiver, which means that there's no payments between now and September 30th of 2020. So even if you have a payment or normally would have a payment due, there is no payment due on federal student loans. This waiver period also counts for public service loan forgiveness program. And if you're on an income repayment plan, that also applies to it. So don't worry that if you're in one of those programs that it's going to impact that in any way. For example, for the public service loan forgiveness program, you typically have to be in the program for a set amount of time and make a set amount of payments. And if you miss a payment, it will impact your ability to actually qualify for that program at the end. However, the CARES Act means that any payments that you don't make during the CARES Act program, even if you already are enrolled in a public service loan forgiveness program, it's not going to disqualify you because of that. So it's really good news for those individuals who are in a public service loan forgiveness program or anticipate that they will be able to take advantage of that at the end. Interest is not going to capitalize during the CARES Act program. And your credit report will reflect the same as if you were making a regular monthly payment. So there's going to be no indication on there that you're not making a payment if it's a federal loan and you're no longer making a payment because of the CARES Act. It's going to reflect as like a regular on-time payment. So there's going to be no negative impact on your credit report or your credit score. And this is going to be backdated to March 13th. So even if, for example, if you had a payment that came out on automatically came out on March 14th, for example. It may not have automatically been caught up in the program because the CARES Act went into place on the 13th, and it takes a while for servicers to update everything. And in fact, not everything's completely updated even right now, and it's April 13th. Pretty much everything is, but not quite. So if, for example, you had a payment that came out after that March 13th date, they're going to actually backdate it to March 13th. So you don't have to worry about that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slides to follow. So if you're eligible for the 0% interest rate, it's fantastic, but that doesn't mean you don't have to pay. If you're able to pay, it's a great time to pay because all the payments you're making are going to be applied to the principal as long as you've already paid the interest that you've already accrued. So if you've accrued any interest prior to March 13th, any payments you make between now and September 30th are first going to be applied to the interest that you accrued before, and then once you've paid off all that interest that was accrued before March 13th, any other remaining payments are then going to be applied directly to the principal. So it's a great way to really pay down on your student loans because you're not accruing any additional interest at this time. If you anticipate receiving forgiveness, there's no reason to pay an extra payment at this time. So if you are enrolled in a public service loan forgiveness program and you anticipate that you're not going to be changing jobs or leaving that industry, and you don't think there's going to be any issues with you getting, to the end of that program and actually qualifying for it and getting your loans forgiven, there's really no incentive for you to make any additional payments at this time because you're not required to with the CARES Act. So it's a good time to kind of take a little leeway from those payments and maybe apply those payments that you normally would put on your student loan onto others' debt, or apply them to maybe your emergency savings account, which we all should be building up at this time as well. After this pandemic is over, if you are still experiencing difficulties, if they have not released any additional incentives for the CARES Act, make sure you're considering unemployment deferment or lower payment options that might be available from your servicer. So you want to contact your loan servicer if any of those things continue to impact you financially beyond the September 30th deadline. If your student loans are in default, or they were in default as of March 13th, 2020, there's no longer involuntary payments on defaulted student loans through September 30th, 2020. So typically, if you're in default on a federal student loan, they could garnish your wages, they could take your income tax refund. If you were receiving Social Security benefits, they could take a portion of those as well. So those are all going to be halted. If you had any garnishments or tax refunds taken on or after March 13th, those will be returned to you. So because the CARES Act went into effect on the 13th, if they, in theory, garnish somebody's wages on March 13th, like they normally would, that payment can actually get refunded back to you. So you want to contact your servicer in order to get that payment refunded to you. It doesn't mean they're forgiving that payment, but basically what it is, it's going to add it onto the end of your loan, but it allows you to get some more money into your budget right now currently to help us survive this COVID pandemic that we're all experiencing. All collection activity on federal loans are also ceased at this time. So there's no collection calls, there's no demands for payment, things of that sort. Doesn't mean you no longer owe the money, it just means they're not actively collecting on those accounts. And the reason being is A, they understand millions of Americans are unemployed right now, and B, they're having to focus all staff that they have, because all staff across the country is impacted, right? Every employer is making changes and shifting. So their focus now is on helping people, do the deferments, do the 0% interest, and not necessarily focusing on collections at this time. They'll get back to collections, I'm sure they will, after this pandemic ends, but right now there's no active collections on federal student loans. If you're in a payment rehab program, that is not going to be negative impactedly either. They're going to be considered as payments made during this time period. And if you want to, you can still continue to pay if you're on default of your student loans. Just because you don't have to doesn't mean you can't. You can if you're able to and you want to, you most certainly can. You just want to contact your servicer to do so. During this time, it's really, really important to communicate with your servicer. And this falls with student loans or all loans in general. So it's a good time to log into your accounts, make sure all your contact information is up to date and accurate. If you had a home phone or a house phone that you disconnected 4 years ago, or when you were in college and now it's no longer applicable or even turned on, now it's time to delete that contact number and update it with your current cell phone number or contact information. Make sure your email address is accurate. And make sure you're opening all mail from any loan servicers at this time. And that includes snail mail, email, any communication. You want to make sure you're really paying attention to it, because it's really critical to know what they're sending you, what kind of aid is available to you, what dates you need to pay attention to as far as when payments are going to be turned back on. So make sure you're really paying attention to all your mail that you're receiving and opening it all and reading it. If your income changes at any time during this pandemic, make sure you're communicating that with your servicer as well. Right now, there's no payments, so it may not feel like you have a need or urgency to communicate that with the lender. But come September 30th, if your job has not rebounded, if you're not back to work full time, you want to make sure you're making those phone calls and you're letting your servicer know so they can get you on some type of income-based repayment program to help ease you back into this. So important information. So in the CARES Act, your servicer had on your federal loans had 15 days to notify you of any changes to your student loans. Most borrowers have already been notified of this. If you haven't, I would definitely log into your account because chances are they don't have your correct contact info. So maybe they don't have your address or your email is incorrect or telephone number is incorrect. But most likely you have already received some type of communication from them. It just may have gone to a spam folder or a junk folder. So you want to make sure those are up to date and that's there. Starting August 1st, your servicer or the Department of Ed is going to start sending you notices to let you know of how this program is going to end, when those payments are going to resume, when the interest is going to resume. So make sure you're reading all that information so you understand that. So you can make adjustments to your household budget. You make sure you have enough money built into your budget at that time to cover those payments should they start resuming. And if you're, like I said before, if your payments are going to be unaffordable at September 30th, when this program ends, or we assume that it's going to be ending, make sure you're communicating that with your servicer. There is other relief for non-federally held federal student loans. Those types of loans, like I said before at the beginning, typically were probably issued prior to 2010. Those loans could be put into what's called a disaster forbearance for 90 days, and it's a little bit different than the CARES Act. Some of those servicers are automatically doing it at this time. Some of them are not. Sometimes a disaster forbearance can be extended, and a disaster forbearance can apply to the FIFO or the Perkins loans. So you want to look into that if those are the types of loans that you have. Sometimes the interest will still accrue. It's at the lender's or the school's discretion for non-defaulted student loans. So if you have a private loan, some of those private loan servicers are offering incentives or programs right now to assist borrowers, but you need to contact them and ask them. It's not going to be an automatic with a private loan. And as always, you can continue to make payments even if you are given assistance during this time. So make sure you figure out your budget, you sit down and do the crisis budget, and you really understand what you can truly afford this time, making sure you're leaving enough room for all the necessities and an emergency fund. I talked about this a little bit already, but private loan programs do vary. So they're vary based off of the servicer and who is the guarantor on those loans. So they're not all going to be the same. So your friend Joe might get a different program, might get a different aid package from his private loan than I would from my private loan package. So make sure you're doing that information yourself and doing your own due diligence as far as researching what's available to you. And some states are also considering postponement of payments. So if you have any state issued student loans, you want to contact those states and ask them. It varies from state to state, and it is changing every day. So you want to make sure you're contacting those servicers to find out what's available to you. And here are some contact information for a wide variety of student loan servicers. These are the biggies. These are our federal student loan servicers. So if you do have a federal student loan, most likely their contact info is listed on this page. And you can also find this information at studentaid.gov. And here are some additional resources that are available to you. So ahead, we have 2 counselors on staff that are student loan counselor certified that can help you navigate your student loan repayment options. And that's myself, as well as Kelly Carson. And there's also some other great resources here listed as well. The first one being studentaidpandemic.org. And this is a great tutorial website. They kind of walk you through the process. You can even take a neat little quiz to make sure you understand what the resources and aid is available to you at this time. Again, that's studentaidpandemic.org. freestudentloanadvice.org. They have some great resources as well. They're a very knowledgeable organization, and they can help. Studentaid.gov, I talked about that one already, but you can do a loan simulator, you can do an income-based repayment simulator on there, tons of resources about your federal student loans. And then if you're looking for specific news announcements regarding Corona or the CARES Act, you want to visit studentaid.gov/announcements-events/coronavirus to check those out as well. Any other additional questions about the stuff that I talked about today or in general about ahead, feel free to give us a call. Our phone numbers are listed here and my email as well. And you can also always visit our website at homesahead.org. And make sure you stay tuned for more videos. We're going to be releasing them throughout this entire pandemic periodically. So we have videos right now currently on how to develop a crisis budget, avoiding foreclosure, contacting loans and servicers in general, whether it's an auto loan or credit card payment, as well as community resources that are available to us in the North Country. Upcoming this week, we're going to be doing an additional video on dealing with the financial stressors and the impact that can have on our mental health, as well as how to do home buyer education online during this COVID-19 pandemic. So if you're looking to buy a home, we can help you with that as well. Again, my name is Samantha Marshall, and make sure you give us a call at 1-800-974-1377 or visit our website at homesahead.org.